Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Marvel Champions video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of different cards from the Sinister Motives campaign expansion. So it features a whole bunch of Spider-Man villains, like the Sinister Six are in there, a few others that aren't in the Sinister Six. We're getting two new heroes. We're getting the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man, as well as Ghost Spider, so Gwen Stacy. We're getting those heroes. And then we're getting some other villains, like again, we're getting Venom, who I don't think Venom is in the Sinister Six, but we're getting other characters like that. And then the interesting thing with the Sinister Six is their health doesn't scale according to the article. There'll be a link in the description to check the article out. Their health doesn't scale, but there's a whole bunch of them that you have to fight. They have their own team-up cards. And I guess the only way to actually beat them is basically there's a scheme that comes in with 10 threat points. Once you remove all of those, you basically have to escape from them. But anyway, let's take a look at Sandman here. So this is his first stage, Sandman villain. 1 scheme, 2 attack with an asterisk. He's a criminal. It looks like he comes in with 16 hit points. And has a Sandblast, which is Force Interrupt. When Sandman attacks you, that attack deals indirect damage. If your identity takes any amount of damage from the attack, resolve the Surging Sands ability on city streets. So, 1 scheme, not great. He's definitely more of a damage dealer. He's not, like super. He's not like Dr. Octopus or anything like that, where he's got like great schemes. He's kind of just does whatever. But so one scheme, 2 attack. Again, looks like it's I think it's 16 hit points there, and the Surging Sands ability. So attack does indirect damage. You can divide that up between yourself, allies, and so on. But if your identity takes any amount, you resolve the effect of Surging Sands, which is on the next card. We'll take a look at that. So here's City Streets. It's an environment. The location, Surging Sands. So special. Place 1 sand counter here. Discard cards on the top of the encounter deck equal to the number of sand counters here. And as a hero action, exhaust a character you control to remove sand counters from here equal to that character's attack. Limit once per round per phase. So I imagine the more counters are on here, the more stuff that Sandman can do with those counters. So that is City Streets. To the next card. We have Sandform. So this is a condition attached to Sandman. Force Interrupt when you deal any amount of damage to Sandman, discard Sandform instead. Resolve the Surging Sands ability on City Streets. So basically, you hit Sandform, sand scatters everywhere, and it goes all over the city, adding counters to that. And if it boosts, it gets revealed and comes into play. So basically, it's a way to kind of prevent damage to Sandman, because if he takes any amount of it, that gets discarded instead. So you might want to just ping it with like a thing that has does 1 damage or something like that. Or, for example, if Sandman were with Captain America, with Captain America's shield, Retaliate would probably trigger this as well. So I wouldn't waste an entire attack on this. I would just do something like maybe a ally attack or something that you can just ping this off of him. And then you do end up having to reveal the Surging Sands ability. So that's Sandform. Into the next card. We have Sand Clone. It's a minion. 1 scheme, X attack. So X is equal to the number of sand counters on city streets. So basically, the more of those that are on there, the stronger this minion is. Comes in with 3 hit points. And when it's defeated, resolve the Surging Sands ability on city streets. So you defeat it, and then again, sand scatters onto that location, adding more sand counters. So you're going to want to keep the sand counters on that environment fairly low, because it will, again, like things like this, it'll increase this minion's attack by that many counters. So that is the Sand Clone. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Venom, the villain. 1 scheme, 2 attack. It's a symbiote. Comes in with a toughness counter, so basically comes in, can basically just take 1 free hit without taking damage. And then has Vengeance as a force response. After you attack and damage Venom with a card you control, place 1 face down boost card on your identity. So let's see. After you attack and damage him, he gets a boost. You get a boost card for him. And I know there's a card later here, one of his schemes, which actually will take those boost cards, and then he'll get to use them. So we have Venom here. Looks like it's kind of hard to see. Looks like it's 17 hit points there. And it has toughness. So don't know what his next level is, because this is only his level 1. But Vengeance seems like it could be pretty brutal, because after you attack and damage Venom with a card you control, place 1 face down boost. So looks like it doesn't take damage from, if you just are to straight up attack him, it doesn't really do anything. But if you use an attack event that does extra damage, you get that boost card, and then he can use it later. So there's Venom. To our next card, here's his main scheme, which is Leave Us Alone. Comes in with 10 or triggers at 10 threat per player. Comes in with 2 threat to start and gets 1 additional threat per player per when the villain activates. And it's a force interrupt when Venom attacks you or activates against you. Move each face down boost card from your identity to Venom. So and then as the stage is completed, the players lose. So this is Venom's main scheme. But you're going to want to potentially just try to damage Venom physically with actual attacks from, I guess, yeah, I don't know if our allies are considered to be cards you control, because it says cards you control, so I wonder if that is specifically like attack events. Because if you're, exhausting your hero to attack, it's still a card you're exhausting to do that with. I don't know. There probably had to be a clarification about that. But from the way I'm reading it, it looks like it's mostly just going to be events. Because, I think that would be a very broken mechanic if every time he got attacked, even just by characters, he would get those additional boost cards. So then with this, when he activates, you basically move all the boost cards to him, and then looks like he can just get a huge attack out of it, or potentially a huge scheme, depending on what boost cards he's given. So that is Leave Us Alone. That's Venom's main scheme. We're going to move into our next card. All right, next up we have the Bell Tower environment to location and quiet. If there are at least three chime counters per player here, flip this card, interrupt. When any amount of damage can be dealt to Venom by an attack, you may place that many chime counters here instead. So if you attack him for 2, you can either, I guess, do the 2 or place the 2 counters on the Bell Tower environment card. Then say environment, and so let's move into our next card. So that's the quiet side of the environment, and now we have the ringing side of the environment. So it says increase all damage Venom takes by 1. If there are no chime counters here, flip the card back to its quiet side, or flip the card over. And it's a force interrupt when Venom attacks. When Venom attacks would deal any amount of damage to an identity, remove that many chime counters from here. For each chime counter removed, that way prevent 1 damage. So this basically just symbolizes kind of Venom's sensitivity to sound. So basically, ringing bells kind of disrupt Venom and they kind of weaken him. So that is what this environment does. So you can, on your turn, you're allowed to, if you go back to Bell Tower, you're allowed to place the damage or chime counters on him instead of damage counters. And then if there are at least 3 counters per player, it gets flipped to the ringing side. So in a single player game, you need 3 tokens on here, or 3 counters. And then it flips over. When it's on this side, he takes additional damage, and then his damage is decreased by the number of counters on, or you remove a counter to decrease damage. So that's a pretty cool environment. So that's the Bell Tower. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have the side scheme, which is Guard the Bell Tower. Treat the Bell Tower's printed text box as if it were blank, except for traits. When revealed, remove each chime counter from the Bell Tower and flip it to the quiet side. So basically, this comes in with 3 threat. Looks like it boosts for 2. And it kind of makes the Bell Tower useless while this scheme is in play. So if you want to use the Bell Tower's effect and, have Venom take increased damage and decrease damage by the number of counters, you're going to have to get rid of this scheme pretty quickly. So makes the Bell Tower useless while it's in play. So that is Guard the Bell Tower. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Mysterio. His is level 1 side. He's a villain. Let's see. 2 scheme, 1 attack with an asterisk. He's a criminal. Looks like it's 15 hit points. And has Seeds of Fear. So force response. After you resolve a boost card during Mysterio's activation, place that card in your discard pile if it has the illusion trait. So I'm guessing what this means is there's going to be cards that have illusions. Let's see. After resolving boost card during Mysterio's activation, place it in your discard pile if it has illusion. So then I guess that means it kind of just goes into your discard pile, essentially gets shuffled into your deck when you reshuffle it, and I guess when you draw them, they just kind of they basically are popping up when you draw. Maybe I'm not really sure, but that is the level 1 side of Mysterio. Let's take a look at our next card. Next up, we have the Maze of Mirrors side scheme for Mysterio. Looks like it comes in, triggers with 8 threat per player, comes in with 2 and gets 1 additional threat per turn, or per villain phase. And is forced to interrupt when you withdraw or discard an encounter card from your deck, deal it to yourself as a face-down encounter card, draw 1 card. So when you withdraw or discard an encounter card from your deck, deal it to yourself as a face-down encounter card and draw 1. So I guess you're drawing cards from your deck and then potentially those illusions are getting dealt out to you. That's what it looks like it's doing. And this is looks like this is Mysterio's main scheme. So triggers are 8, comes in with starts with 2 per player, and gets 1 additional. But yeah, when you would draw or discard an encounter card from your deck, deal it to yourself as a face down encounter card. So potentially, I would imagine though, if they're illusion cards, like you're going to know when you're going to get them because the card backs would be obviously the villain, deck backs are orange, the hero ones are blue. So I guess you're going to know when you're getting an illusion card, unless you just play with like opaque sleeves or something like that. But anyway, that is Maze of Mirrors. We're going to move into our next card. All right, next up we have Humongous Illusionation. This is an attachment and an illusion. So attach to Mysterio, hero action, spend a resource of any type, and shuffle the top 2 cards of the encounter deck into your deck, discard this card. So yeah, like to get rid of it, you're going to be taking on potentially illusion cards or just other Mysterio cards in your deck. But the penalty of having it out is it does give Mysterio +3 attack, which is pretty heavy. So spend a resource of any type, and then you take the 2 cards of the encounter deck and shuffle them into your deck to get rid of it. Depending on like what you're doing, that might be worth it. It might not be, but also having Mysterio just standing around with an additional 3 attack is pretty rough. So that is Humongous Hallucination. We're going to move into our next card here. We have Shifting Apparition. This is a minion. Let's see. 1 scheme, 1 attack. It's an illusion. Has 1 hit point. It has guard. So you have to attack it before you can attack the villain. And when defeated, if this minion was defeated with excess damage, the defending player shuffles the top card of the encounter deck into their deck. So if you don't want to do that, you basically just have to do 1 damage exactly. Like I said, Captain America's shield is retaliate, so if this thing attacks against Captain America, it'll just ping the 1 damage, and you'll be able to get rid of it without having to shuffle cards from the encounter deck into your deck. So that is Shifting Apparition. We're going to move into our next card. Here we have Fearmonger. It's a treachery. Has Surge. When revealed, discard your hand and draw up to your hand size, which could be good or bad. Let's say you have only a couple cards in your hand, you might get a full hand back. Or if you have like a really good hand, you're going to potentially lose that hand and have to get a hand that might not be as good. But it also surges, so you do it, you discard your hand and draw a new hand, and then do another encounter card. And also, if it comes out as a boost, to choose to either spend 2 mental resources, or deal this card to yourself face down as a face down encounter. So if it boosts, it basically comes into play unless you spend those 2 resources, and when it comes out, it surges and you discard your hand and draw a new hand. So that is Fearmonger. We're going to move into our next card. Looks like we're moving into Sinister 6 now, I believe. We have Dr. Octopus. Has 1, this is stage 1, 2 health, not 2 health, 2 scheme, 2 attack. Looks like it's only 8 hit points. So yeah, they said the hit points on the Sinister 6 don't increase based on number of players. But then also there's ways for them to basically recur themselves, and there's weird activation order things. So this is activation order 1. And as a force response, after Dr. Octopus attacks and damages you, place 1 threat on each scheme, move the active counter to the next villain in the activation order. So basically, looks like Dr. Octopus activates first. When he activates, he passes the activation token to the person in activation order number 2, and so on. And when he gets defeated, remove 4 threat from a scheme, or from a side scheme, 7 instead if no other villains are in play, and then set this villain aside. After he gets defeated, he gets set aside. We're going to move into our next card. We have Electro. This is level 1. I don't know if they're going to have multiple levels or not. Looks like it's also 8 hit points, 2 scheme, 1 attack. He's activation order number 2. So after Dr. Octopus goes, Electro goes. Force response, after Electro attacks and damages you, discard the top 7 cards of your deck. Move the active counter to the next villain in the activation order. And when defeated, remove 4 threat from a side scheme, or 7 if there's no other villains in play. Set the villain aside. So it looks like the when defeated thing is very similar to, or it's the exact same thing as Dr. Octopus's. So then let's see who's next. If it's the next Sinister 6, we have this was Electro into the next card. We have Hobgoblin. Looks like I can't tell. Looks like it's 8 hit points possibly. 2 scheme, 1 attack with an asterisk. So he's activation order number 3. And after Hobgoblin attacks and damages you, take 2 indirect damage. Move the active counter to the next villain. And when defeated, remove 4 threat from the scheme. 7 instead if there are no other villains in play. Set it aside. So these villains are fairly weak, but I believe like you're going to have to be. I think what they make up in with low hit points, they're making up for in the fact that there's just a bunch of them, and they all have these kinds of crazy activation abilities. Like for this one, you take extra damage when he damages you. So that is Hobgoblin. Let's move into our next card. Next up, we have Kraven the Hunter. 1 scheme, 2 attack with an asterisk. Pretty low hit points. I can't tell if it's 5 or 8. It's kind of blurry. But force response, after Kraven attacks and damages you, choose and discard a support or upgrade you control, and then move the activation counter to the next villain. When defeated, same thing. Remove 4th threat or 7 if there's no other villains in play, and then set it aside. So these villains are fairly basic, but they make up for a lot by having these various things, and then the fact that I think they can all come back at some point and stuff like that. And then there's a main scheme where I think it's called Sinister Synchronization. We'll get to that later, and that is quite powerful with them. So that is Kraven. So that's activation order number 4. Next card. We have Scorpion. 0 scheme, 3 attack, asterisk. He's activation order number 5. Looks like he has 10 hit points. After Scorpion attacks and damages you, stun a character you control, move the active counter to the next villain. And again, when defeated, remove 4 or 7 if there's no other villains in play, and then set it aside. So 0 scheme, but 3 attacks are pretty powerful because he's basically just kind of like a brute force, basically. So after that, so that is Scorpion. Next card, we have Vulture. Let's see, 7 hit points, 1 scheme, 2 attack. He's number 6. And after he attacks and damages you, choose and discard 1 card from your hand, and then move the activation counter. When defeated, same thing, 4 or 7 threat. Once he's defeated, he gets set aside. So that is Vulture. Next card here, we have Sinister Synchronization. So this is their main scheme. Triggers at 8 threat per player. Comes in with 2. And has a +1 threat per player per when the villains go. It has Ambush. Choose a set-aside villain at random, put that villain into play, and place the active counter on it. In expert mode, place 2 threat on light at the end. That's one of the main schemes as well. So force interrupt when a villain would activate. If no villain is in play, resolve the card's ambush ability, continue that activation. So basically, this comes out, and then so when the special ability triggers, another villain comes into play. So I imagine if it's a villain you've already defeated, they just come back. And they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And they said in the article that you are not actually defeating the Sinister Six, you're just basically escaping them. So you defeat one, it gets set aside. I would imagine something triggers a special ability on this, another villain comes out. And then if it gets triggered again, so you may have multiple villains in the order. And then based on the number of, let's say you have Dr. Octopus out, he's going to activate first. And then it goes to Electro and so on. So after that happens, it looks like villains are going to basically be defeated and come back and come back and come back. So that is, that's Sinister Synchronization. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Light at the End. This is a side scheme, and it's a trap, so it hinders 10. Permanent, and it comes in basically with 10 threat. Players cannot win unless they escape, and as a forced interrupt, when the last threat is removed from the scheme, resolve the ambush ability on the main scheme, and flip this card. Players can escape on the other side. So again, the ambush was choose a set-aside villain at random and put it into play, and then place the active counter on it. And then in expert mode, there's going to be 2 threat placed on Light at the End. So I think in normal play, once you defeat it, basically defeat the scheme, a villain will come into play, but you're not putting threat on it. In expert mode, you're going to be putting threat. And when the last threat is removed, resolve the special ability. So that is I believe you win by escaping. I don't know if they actually show you what the escape card side looks like. But here we have some attachments and things like that. So this is Heightened Morale. It's an attachment attached to the villain with the highest activation value. If you cannot resolve the ambush ability on the main scheme, then attach a card to the active villain. X is equal to the number of villains in play. So basically, this gets plus. If there's a bunch of villains in play, this comes out and has a ton of attack. So with the highest activation, and then basically, if you can't do it, you resolve the ambush and then attach it. So it looks like if there's no villain out, it comes out and you put a villain in play. So it looks like it'd be +1. So it'll basically. If there's a low amount of villains in play, it'll be plus a low amount of attack. But there's a bunch out, it'll be that villain gets plus X attack, which could be low depending on the number of villains, or really high depending if you have a ton of villains in play. So that is Heightened Morale. Let's move into our next card. We have Take One for the Team. It's an attachment. So you attach to the villain with the highest attack. If you cannot resolve the ambush ability on the main scheme and attach it to the active villain, you cannot attack villains who do not have an attached copy of Take One for the Team. So basically, you put it on a villain, and that is the only villain that can be attacked. Like they're basically, it's kind of it's like a villain guard. Basically, it sounds like they're like you have to attack that person. So yeah, you cannot attack villains who do not have a copy of Take One for the Team. So basically, that villain has to get attacked, and I guess once they get attacked and they get defeated, that card gets discarded, and then you can attack the other villains whenever you're ready. But that is Take One for the Team. Next card. We have Frequent Flyers. I believe I mentioned something about team-up cards, so this is the team-up card for Vulture and Hobgoblin. So as an expert mode, is card gains Insight 1 and cannot be canceled. When revealed, put the set-aside Hobgoblin and Vulture into play. If Hobgoblin is already in play, take 2 indirect damage. If Vulture is already in play, discard 1 card at random from your hand. So let's see. Put the set-aside Hobgoblin and Vulture into play. So like basically, if they're not out, they come out, and if one of them is already out, they I imagine if they're both out, you take both. You do the 2 indirect damage and discard a card if they're already in play though when this comes out. So it either brings them out or makes you have some negative effect. So that is Frequent Flyers for Vulture and Hobgoblin. Next card. We have Robotic Enhancements. It's a treachery. In expert mode, this card gains Insight 1 and cannot be canceled. So like a lot of cards that say like cancel the treachery aren't going to affect that. It's like in Magic where cards are uncounterable kind of thing. When revealed, put the set-aside Dr. Octopus and Scorpion into play. If Dr. Octopus is already in play, confuse a character you control. If Scorpion's already in play, stun a character. So confuse with Octopus and stun with Scorpion. It's a team-up card for them, so that is Robotic Enhancements. We're going to move into our next card. Alright, into the heroes, we now have Ghost Spider. 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense. Web Warrior trait. Let's see, looks like 10 hit points and hand size of 5 with dizzying reflexes as a response after you resolve an interrupt or response ability on an event. Ready Ghost Spider, limit once per phase. So that's nice because it's per phase, because you can do it during the hero phase, you can do it during the villain phase as well. So that is Ghost Spider. Next card, we have the Ghost Kick. It's a 2-cost event. Generates a physical resource if you discard it. It's an attack. Hero response, attack after Ghost Spider uses a basic power, deal 6 damage to an enemy. Max one per basic power use. So pay 2. After you make a basic power, basically deal 6 damage to an enemy, I guess, plus the attack too. Because after Ghost Spider uses a basic power, so like your basic attack, you can you respond with this and then do 6 damage. Right, that's pretty good. That is the Ghost Kick. Into our next card. We have Phantom Flip, 2-cost event. It's a thwart, generates an energy resource if you discard it. It's a hero response. Thwart after Ghost Spider uses a basic power, remove 5 threat from a scheme. Max 1 per basic power use. So basically, the Ghost Kick does damage. The Phantom Flip is for getting rid of threat. So that's Phantom Flip. Next card. We have Pirouette and Punch, 2-cost event. It's a skill, generates a mental resource if you discard it. It is a hero interrupt. When a card is revealed from the encounter deck, deal damage to the villain equal to 1 more than the number of boost icons on the card, and then cancel the card's when revealed effects. So let's see. Revealed, deal damage. So it comes in with 2 boosts. It does 3 damage because it's 1 plus the number of icons, and then the card's when revealed effects get canceled. So that's a pretty good interrupt there. So that's Pirouette and Punch. Next card, we have the Web Bracelet. It's an item. It's tech. Generates a physical resource if you discard it. And after you resolve an interrupted response ability of an event, exhaust Web Bracelet to draw a card. So very similar to her main ability of readying herself by when you do an interrupted response. But this one allows you to exhaust it to draw a card, which is pretty good. That's the Web Bracelet. Next card. We have Gwen Stacy. This is the Alter Ego, 3 recovery, hand size of 6 and 10 hit points. And as an action, she's a civilian as well. As an action, choose to either shuffle Trinket. So shuffle Ticket to the Multiverse from your discard pile into your deck, or ready George Stacy, limit once per round. So that is Gwen Stacy. Into our next card here, we have George Stacy. This is a support. 1 cost, generates an energy resource if you discard it. Events attached to George Stacy may be played as if they were in your hand. Action, exhaust George Stacy. Attach 1 event from your hand face down here to a maximum of 3. And then Gwen Stacy's Alter Ego, again, lets you ready George Stacy. or you get the Ticket to the Multiverse card and shuffle into your deck. So that's George Stacy. Into our next card, we have Ticket to the Multiverse. So 3-cost upgrade. It's an item. Generates 2 wild resources. It's an action. Remove Ticket to the Multiverse from the game. So remove it from the game, discard your hand, shuffle your discard pile into your deck, draw up to your hand size, and then ready each Ghost Spider card you control. So it's like almost like a weird reset. So basically, you're removing it from the game, you're discarding your hand, you're discarding your hand, shuffling your deck up, basically getting a new starting hand essentially, and then getting everything readied. It looks like that's a once per game use because it looks like it gets removed from the game once it's used. But if you were to for some reason discard it to get the resources, or if you were forced to discard it from your hand from some other effect, Gwen Stacy's alter ego ability lets you get it back into your deck. So that is Ticket to the Multiverse. We're going to move into our next card. Here we have Across the Spider-Verse. It's a 2-cost event. Generates a wild resource if you use it or discard it. Max 1 per deck. Hero action. Exhaust a Web Warrior card you control. Search the discard pile for a Web Warrior ally and put it into play. Then choose a player. That player may spend 3 resources of any type to repeat this ability. So it allows you to bring in get Web Warrior allies, but also potentially other versions of Spider-Man if you have those in your deck. Like, since it's basically like you're being like, hey, this is Miles' universe, this is Peter Parker's universe, this is any other version of Spider-Man that you're bringing in, and they do Spider-Man 2099 and so on. That's really cool. So that is Across the Spider-Verse. We're going to move into our next card. I like that it's also repeatable by spending resources, so you can keep bringing them in. So again, that's Across the Spider-Verse. Into our next card, we have Silk. Can't tell the alter ego name, but it's a 2-cost ally. Generates a energy resource if you discard it. It's a Web Warrior. Comes in with 2 hit points, 1 thwart, 1 attack, with 1 consequential damage each. And after you play Silk from your hand, if you control another Web Warrior card, search your counter deck for a Treachery and discard it. That is a really cool ability. So if you control another Web Warrior, basically like, I'm going to get rid of Shadows of the Past. I'm just going to go through and discard that or discard my obligation. That's really good. So that is Silk. Into our next card, we have Spider UK. It's a 3-cost ally. Generates a physical resource if you discard it. He's also a Web Warrior with 5 hit points, 1 thwart for 1 consequential damage, and 2 attack for 2 consequential damage per attack. And as an interrupt, when Spider UK defends against an attack, deal damage to the attacking enemy equal to the number of Web Warrior cards you control. So if you have a bunch of Web Warriors out, when he defends, he'll do additional damage. So that's Spider UK. We're going to move into our next card. We have Jump Flip. It's a 1-cost event. Generates a physical resource. It's a defense after Hero Interrupt defense. When you would take any amount of damage, prevent 2 of that damage. If you paid for this card using an energy resource, remove 2 threat from the main scheme. So prevents 2 damage, and if you spend a energy resource, it also gets rid of 2 threat. Pretty good. So that is the Jump Flip. To our next card, we have What Doesn't Kill Me. So it looks like Gwen Stacy is going to be a protection deck at least the pre-built one from what I'm gathering. What Doesn't Kill Me, 2-cost event. Generates a physical resource. Requirement is physical. So while paying for this card, spend the listed resources. Hero action: heal 2 damage from your hero. Ready your hero. So it looks like it is you do have to spend physical resource on it to be able to use it. But again, heal 2 damage is pretty good, and then also being able to ready your hero is a huge effect on that as well. That is What Doesn't Kill Me. Into our next card, we have Spider-Man. So 2 thwart, 2 attack, 2 defense. He's a champion and a Web Warrior. Let's see. Hand size of 5, 9 hit points. Has Venom Blast, so special, deal 2 damage to an enemy and stun the enemy. Spider Camouflage, special, give Spider-Man a tough status card and confuse an enemy. So I believe there's going to be cards in this deck that will allow you to trigger those specials. So this is the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man. So he's got really good stats. So basically it's like Captain America's stats, so 2, 2, and 2, which is pretty good. And into our next card here, we have Miles Morales, the alter ego. 4 recovery, civilian, hand size of 6 with 9 hit points. And response, after you change to his form, shuffle 1 Spider-Man card. Well, after you change to his form, shuffle a Spider-Man card from your discard pile into your deck. So goes from Spider-Man to Miles Morales, you get a Spider-Man card back into your deck, which is pretty good. So that's Miles Morales. Into our next card, we have Swing In. It's a 2-cost event. It's a thwart. Generates an energy resource if you discard it. Hero action: thwart, remove 4 threat from a scheme. If you pay for this card using a mental resource, resolve Spider-Man's special or Spider-Man's spider camouflage ability. So certain resources looks like it's going to trigger that ability if you use that resource on the card. So that's swing in. Next up, we have Web Shot, 2-cost event. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. It's an attack, hero action. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. If you pay for this card using an energy resource, resolve Spider-Man's Venom Blast ability. That's pretty good. So yeah, that's what I figured. There's going to be cards that would trigger those special effects. So that is Web Shot. Into our next card. We have Arachnobatics. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. 1-cost event. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. It's an attack. Hero action. Deal 2 damage to an enemy. If the enemy has a stun status card on it, deal 3 additional damage to it. If the enemy has a confused status on it, deal 3 additional damage to it. So if the enemy is stunned or confused, it's gonna do additional damage. So it deals 2 damage to start, and then if it has either of those status effects, it looks like it's going to do 3 additional damage. So that can be like for 1 cost, if there's like an enemy out that's already got those effects on there, you're looking at like 5 damage for 1 resource. That's pretty big. And I would imagine if the enemy is both stunned and confused, it would do it twice. So you get 8 damage for 1 potentially. That is pretty good. So that's Arachnobatics. Into our next card. We have Power Within. It's a 1-cost upgrade. Superpower. Generates an energy resource if you discard it. And as a hero response, after your hero uses a basic power, discard Power Within, resolve Spider-Man's Venom Blast ability. So basically, whenever you, after your hero's basic power, you discard it, and then you get to do the Venom Blast. So that is Power Within. Next card up. We have Defense Mechanism. So it's a superpower, 1-cost upgrade. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. Hero response, after your hero uses a basic power, discard Defense Mechanism and resolve the Spider Camouflage ability. Pretty good. Next up, we have Double Life. It's a 1-cost event, max 1 per round. Generates an energy resource if you discard it. Let's see. Action, change your form. If you pay for this card using a physical resource, ready your identity. So you can go between, doesn't say it's a hero card or a alter ego card. It looks like you can do it in either. So if you're in hero form, you can go to alter ego form and ready it. If you're in alter ego form, you can go to hero form and then ready your character. So that is Double Life. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Monica Chang. So it looks like Miles Morales' deck is going to be a Justice deck. So 3-cost ally. Let's see. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. 1 thwart, 1 attack of 1 consequential damage each. Their shield comes in with 2 hit points. After Monica Change enters play, search your deck, hand, and discard pile for a copy of the surveillance team support, and put it into play. Place 1 Snoop counter on each surveillance team you control. So that is Monica Chang. I remember surveillance team. I don't really play Justice a lot, but I remember surveillance team was an older card. But I imagine we're getting a copy of it in this deck, I would think. Next up, we have Agent 13, 4-cost ally. Gray can go in any deck. Sharon Carter. Let's see, 2 thwart, and for 1 consequential damage, 1 attack for 1 consequential damage. Shield and a spy comes in with 4 hit points. And after Agent 13 attacks or thwarts, choose a shield support that you control, or shield support, ready that support. So the other Agent 13 came out and basically, I think, removed threat right away. I think she was exclusive to Captain America's deck. This one looks interesting because I think it's 4 health, comes in doesn't thwart right away or doesn't just automatically remove threat, but can do remove 2 threat, and then also I like that she can basically ready shield supports, so like helicarriers and things like that. So that's pretty good. So that is Agent 13. I also like that she goes in any deck, so she's gray, so she's not exclusive to any particular one deck type. So that's Agent 13. We're gonna move into our next card. We have Field Agent. It's a 1-cost support. It's a persona or personnel and shield, or persona, it looks like. Shield uses 3 backup counters. It's a hero interrupt. It also generates an energy resource if you discard it. As a hero interrupt, when a shield ally would take any amount of damage or any amount of consequential damage, exhaust Field Agent, remove 1 backup counter to prevent 1 of that damage. So basically, comes in with 3 uses. When another shield ally would take consequential damage, you can exhaust the agent to remove 1 backup counter. So it's a support, not an ally. That's actually kind of cool. And then prevents consequential damage. Prevents consequential damage, which is pretty interesting. So that's the field agent. Into our next card, we have surveillance team. So 2-cost support. Let's see. Generates a mental resource if you discard it. Uses 3 snoop counters. Enters play with 3 counters. When those are gone, discard the card. Exhaust surveillance team and remove 1 snoop counter from it to remove a threat from the scheme. So Monica Chang comes out and basically just keeps these surveillance teams kind of like fueled up so they can just remove more threat, which is pretty good. So that's surveillance team. Into our next card, we have Homeland Intervention. It's an event. It's shield and the tactic. Generates a energy resource if you discard it. Action, exhaust up to 3 shield cards you control and choose a scheme. Remove 2 threat from that scheme for each card exhausted this way. So it looks like the most you're going to be able to remove is 6, because if you exhaust 3 shield cards, you're removing 2 threat points per thing. That's pretty good, and then I like that. And then Sharon Carter can then just use her ability to ready them again, which is pretty good. And we're going to take a look at one last card, and that's going to wrap up this video. So the next card here is Global Logistics. It's a 0-cost event. It's shield and the tactic. Generates a physical resource if you discard it. As an action, exhaust 1 shield card you control. Look at the top 4 cards of the player deck or the counter deck. Discard any number of those and put the others on the top and or bottom of the deck in any order. So let's see. You get to do it for both of you. Look at top cards of the player deck or the encounter deck. You can't do like 2 and 2. But let's say you look at the top 4 cards of your deck. If there's cards that you don't want, you can basically put them get rid of them and put them, discard any number of them and put the others on the bottom. I would imagine it does really well with the encounter deck. Like if you look at the top 4, there's like some really nasty events in there. You can basically just discard those and then put the other ones that you don't want to deal with on the bottom or top. So that is all the cards that have been revealed so far, I believe, from the Sinister Motives campaign. I'm looking forward to trying this out, especially the Sinister Six. That it looks like a very interesting way to play against multiple villains, where they're coming in and doing various other things. They said the scenarios are going to be playable on their own. They're also going to be part of the campaign if you want to stretch it into a whole campaign as well. So they said they haven't revealed the main villain of the actual Sinister Motives campaign yet. They said in the article that it was basically like a mix between something like a villain and some other thing. And I can't recall exactly what it said. But what it reminded me of, if I'm guessing, it might be what was it called? Carnage Dr. Octopus, because in the Spider-Man video game from like 21 years ago or whatever it was, I think the final boss of the game was you beat Dr. Octopus, and I think you beat Carnage, and I think the Carnage symbiote infected Dr. Octopus, and you had to basically, it was an escape thing where you basically had to web swing down this out of this base, being chased by a gigantic version of Dr. Octopus that was basically had the Venom symbiote on it. I don't know who the villain's going to be, but they're the main villain of the campaign will probably be revealed at some later date. Once it does, I'll have a video up about that, or when new cards get revealed for these decks, or anything else. And one quick bit of news, we do have a release date for Vision. He's going to be coming out in about a month, so they said January 14th is a release date for Vision. I guess Valkyrie's coming out after that. I haven't heard anything about Valkyrie lately, so I don't know if, because I think Hood was December, because I know they got pushed back, so maybe, and then I imagine Valkyrie coming out after Vision, potentially. But that's going to do it for now. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching, and take care.